Man, this is
Hey,
like an atomic
Fatheads.
fireball.
Welcome back to. Damn it, Dennis. Welcome back to another episode of Cigar Chat. We're doing a News of the Week edition this week because we had a guest fall through, but he'll be back in a couple weeks. Um, we're going to talk tonight. We're going to kind of do a recap of the Cigar March Madness. We're going to announce the winners of our Avo contest. We got a couple other things to talk about that have been going on in the world. And of course, if you've got any questions or comments or anything, feel free to drop them in the comments. We've really liked the last couple episodes, how there's been a lot of interaction when we do this kind of episode, because there's not really a guest to ask questions, and we don't have a specific topic, which is kind of nice. We're just hanging out. So I'm your host, Tripp. Got my dual co-hosts here. Jason, how are you this evening?
Doing great. Enjoying this. It looks like we're actually transitioning into spring now, so I don't have to wear 6 different layers when I'm out here. So I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, that's got to be nice. What about you, Dennis? How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. As soon as I lit this cigar, my mood just totally changed.
So before we get into what we're smoking, we'll talk about what we're smoking. We'll go around the table in a second. I do want to mention we're live on Facebook, broadcast around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course available on your favorite podcast catcher or the old YouTubes. So first, let's talk about what we're smoking. I'm on the tail end of the new craft from Roma Craft. I just got these in this week, but I just had to test the waters, see how they are. And so far, I'm digging it. I like the. There's something about that like double wrapper with a candela that adds like a layer of flavor that I really like with pretty much anybody that does it. Primarily this cigar and some of the stuff from Blackworks.
It's really cool when you get that broadleaf over that
Yeah.
candela.
Yeah, and this one's Pennsylvania broadleaf, so it's got that that really intense spice. What are you smoking, Jason?
I am smoking a Wise Man Maduro.
Nice.
Love that cigar.
Awesome cigar.
And then Dennis, what are you smoking?
I got myself a little Nakatamale action.
The number one cigar of the year, according to those dummies over at Cigar Federation. What do you think so far, Dennis? You were saying it was a fireball?
It was like, the first just as I lit it, it was like an atomic fireball. Like the spice just hit me. And I wasn't expecting it. And it's not overwhelming, but it's really bold.
I feel like atomic fireball is actually the perfect description of it because it's a cinnamony spice.
Yeah. Definitely.
And not spice like the cinnamon out of your cabinet, spice like a spicy cinnamon candy.
Yeah.
Which I dig that cigar a lot.
It's really good. Wish I still had some.
So what do you guys want to talk about first? I've got our Avo winners here in a tab. I've got our March Madness winners in a tab. You want to talk about why don't we just talk about the top 16 of March Madness? I feel like that's a good place to start. Maybe the top 8. Let's do the top 16. And we'll
pull it up.
We'll try not to talk too much about which one we prefer, because obviously we all vote and we all have preferences. So the first one is the Wise Man Maduro and the Sobremesa. Those are two, the Sobremesa and the Wise Man are forever kindred cigars, just because of the timing and the relationship that Saka and Nick Melillo have.
Yeah, that's one of those ones when I was thinking about voting for it, it was really hard to decide because I kept going back to I love the Wise Man Maduro in that Corona size, and then the Sobremesa Short Churchill is just, I can't get enough of those either. So they're two cigars that are staples now in my rotation.
All right. Well, Bob Dog says he wants to hear about the top 8. I think that's a good idea. As I'm reading through the list, we're going to be doing a lot of talking if we're talking about the top 16. So we'll talk about the final 8. I think there's a word for that, but I don't follow the sports, so I don't know what the correct terminology is.
The Elite 8.
The Elite 8. Okay,
Elite 8,
that makes sense. So that would be the Sober Mesa and the cigar that went on to win it all, the Boondock Saint.
Yeah.
And that was another one that, like, there were a lot of tough decisions this year for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think both of those cigars, it's a very different experience. So it's like I love both of them, but they're very different.
Those two are very, very different cigars. And then, so Steve Saka was very close to having. He had 5 cigars, which we got. So actually, that's one thing that I really wanted to talk about here. We got a lot of complaints about Steve Saka having 5 cigars in the running this year. And the thing is that we don't decide which cigars. That's one of the things that makes it kind of fun for me, is that we don't decide what's going to be in the top 64, like in March Madness. We pull it straight out of the half wheel cigar consensus, which covers pretty much all of cigar media. They have some criteria that's they make it a little bit stricter every year, but it's still really if you review cigars, you can have input on that. And they basically weight each cigar or each vote depending on what rank it is and all that stuff. And they have a whole algorithm they use. But the important thing is we have like a 3% impact on who's going to be in this list. So, we didn't make the decisions this year. And we never do. We always use the half-wheel consensus because I think that's the most fair way to do it. And it eliminates any bias from our side. So that's how Steve ended up with 5 cigars, and he almost made it to all 4 in the
It was
the
close.
Final 4.
Oh, yeah.
But he had a couple losses there that knocked him out, and he ended up only having 1 cigar in each round of the Final 4. So the next one in the top 8 was the Wanderlust and the Exclusivo from Steve Saka. What do you guys think about those? Have either of you smoked the Wanderlust?
I have not.
Which Exclusivo was it? Was it the Naka Tamale or the other one?
It was the first one, the Exclusivo.
First one. Okay.
So the first Muestra de Saka was the Exclusivo. The second one was the Naka Tamale.
Yeah. Yeah, I smoked the Exclusivo and thought it was a great cigar. Kind of a little bit of a more mild cigar than you might expect from Saka, but it was really complex and really nice. I've still never smoked a Wanderlust. I need to go to Germany or something.
Yeah, obviously they're not easy to get a hold of, and we just lost Denis, so our video is going to be a little funky for a few minutes here.
I'm here.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
Just cut out for a minute.
Very weird.
So the Wanderlust, I've smoked 2 of them now. Or no, I guess I've smoked a couple more than that. So I smoked a pre-release at the factory that was good, but it was missing the intensity that Roma Craft is known for. It didn't taste like something that Roma Craft would make at all. And then the second version of it, Skip assures me, he swears up and down, it's the exact same leaf for the wrapper. They've just fermented longer, but it's way thicker and darker and toothier. The first one looked kind of like a dark mottled looking Habano. And the second one it looks like a Maduro. And both of them are really good. I really like it. But I haven't smoked it under good enough conditions that I can like review it or anything. Most of the ones I smoked were like in Nicaragua after 15 cigars a day for a week, and
couple of drinks.
Yeah, it's hard to accurately gauge something when you're in that condition. And then, I lost my spot here. Oh, the final round was another Steve Saka cigar, the Todos Las Dias, versus the Eye of the Shark, which was the number 1 cigar according to Cigar Aficionado. Did you guys smoke either of those?
I have smoked both.
What did you think, Jason?
So I think, that your Don Carlos Eye of the Shark, that's kind of a classic cigar in a way. It's really popular. It's not the easiest thing to come by. Shops tend to get them and then they sell out of them really quickly. But it's honestly not my favorite Fuente cigar. Like, they're good and they're a bit of a treat, but it's not something I tend to go to a lot.
I agree. It's if you've ever had the Don Carlos Private Reserve, it's a very, I don't know if it's the same blend, but it's certainly a very similar blend to that one. And for me, there are other Fuente cigars that I prefer, but that's just me. And the Todos Los Dias is just a powerhouse of a cigar.
It's really good. And that one is I got a sampler of that when they were first released, so I was able to smoke, I think, almost all the different sizes. And it's really interesting how the different sizes of that cigar present themselves differently. I really like that. What is it? That kind of bellicoso.
Oh, the double wide bellicoso.
Yeah.
It's for anybody who's smoked, like the way I always describe it for people who haven't held it in their hand or bought one or smoked one, is everybody and their grandma pretty much has smoked a Hoyo de Nicaragua Antaño Grand Consul. It's their most popular size, and it's the same size as that. It might be like quarter-inch shorter or longer or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
It's basically the same size.
It's good. It's less of a straightforward powerhouse and more of a sneaky powerhouse in that size.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually enjoyed it more than the Eye of the Shark.
I did too, actually. And then, of course, we don't need to talk about who moved on. Everybody can go look that up. But it came down to the interestingly, I don't know whether it's not surprising to me. It wasn't surprising that it came down to the Boondock Saint from Black Label Trading Company and the Romacraft Wanderlust, because they both have pretty big social media followings, and as we've seen every year, that's what wins you this competition. I mean, we do this just for fun, basically. Nobody wins anything. At least not these days. We used to give away prizes, but that was when it was easier to give cigars away and easier to pry cigars out of manufacturers' hands so that we could give them to you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, things have changed with the FDA. But it came down to those two, and Black Label cleaned up. They got, let me see what the numbers are here, 63 to 37%. And that says a lot because Romacraft has a huge following on social media. And, both of them were casually asking people to vote. It wasn't like we've seen in some years where they're blasting out emails every couple days saying, please vote for me. But, congratulations to Black Label Trading Company. The Boondock Saint is a cigar that I reviewed it, and I don't remember what the score was. It was a 96 or a 97. And when I smoked it, I said, this is my cigar of the year. The only reason it didn't, I think it was number 3 or 4 on our list, and the only reason was because I smoked other stuff after that that just edged it out ever so slightly.
Yeah, and hearing that it was in the final, I smoked one, and it's just a crazy good cigar. Like, that is one of those cigars where I just want to not be bothered and be left alone for like 2 hours so I can just sit there and enjoy that thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what kind of cigar it is. It's the kind of cigar that it's oozing with flavor. It's got so much depth of flavor and so many layers. And I mean, if you haven't smoked a Boondock Saint, you got to go find one.
I've actually been on the hunt. I'm trying to stock up.
I mean, that's part of the problem. I mean, it's a great thing for them, but it's part of the problem for consumers is that when you hear about a Black Label cigar that's really good, or a Blackworks cigar, this one's actually a Blackworks cigar. By the time you hear that it's good, if you're not in on it when it comes out, you're probably not going to find any.
Yeah.
Because they go real quick and their production is pretty limited, which I think is a very good marketing strategy because it keeps things flying off the shelves rather than we've all seen that cigar that comes out and everybody loves it, and then they kind of flood the market, and it's just available everywhere. So I think it's really smart of James and Angela to have gone this route. All right, let me get to some of our comments here because we got a bunch. So Lou Liga is smoking a Neon Tiger tonight. Oh man, I've only had one because I haven't been to Nicaragua since they started making them. But I got one at the show, and that cigar blew my mind. Like, that cigar is just incredible.
It's a really cool looking cigar.
I mean, it's got 4 wrappers on it.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's crazy. Let's see who else had some good comments. Oh, Matt Ross. Matt Ross, for people who don't know him, he's a mod, and at Cigar Federation, he's a beer nut. And he is the guy who understands Excel and Google forms enough that he sets up March Madness every year for us. And thank you, Matt. But he says that five cigars in the Elite 8 is a record. Previously, it was 3 that a single brand had in the Elite 8, which is, I mean, it's crazy that he had 5 cigars out of the 64, and then all 5 of them made it into the Elite 8.
To make it that far.
Yeah. Dunbarton had a big year too. I mean, they came out with a lot of releases, and they were all just fantastic cigars.
Yeah. Every cigar that Steve comes out with, I've never had one that was like, eh. All of them, in my opinion, have been very good. I don't know if that's his palate or what it is, but I like everything he's made.
And they're all just different enough where you're engaged for each cigar, and it's still exciting. You don't lose that interest.
Yeah, the only ones that are really close at all are the Umbagog and the Micarita.
Yeah.
Which are similar, but they're not really close in terms of flavor profile. A novice might think that they taste the same, but there's a definite difference between the two. The Umbagog tends to be a little more sweet, earthy, kind of more basic flavors, and the Micarita is spicier a little bit and just has a little more complexity.
Yeah. I raged on Micarita Corona Gordas for a little bit there, and that's a really good size for that cigar.
Jack Dawson just says, "What's up, fellas?" What's up, Jack? Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Glad you could watch. Lou Liga says that BLTC won because of guerrilla marketing. That's exactly what it is. That's what it comes down to. That's what it's all about in Cigar March Madness. You got to reach out to your followers and tell them to vote for you. In a world past, it would have been possible to win just by having a great cigar, but that's not enough. People are going to vote for your cigar whether or not they've smoked it if they follow you and they're a fan. And that's what it's all about. But, it's always fun because I don't know if we've had the same company win twice.
I don't think so. I think it's been a different person every year.
Yeah, I think every year it's a different manufacturer. Brad Przekowski, I hope I'm saying that right, because that is a very Scandinavian last name, or maybe Polish, that I can't even try to pronounce correctly. So I'm not even going to try it again. But he just finished smoking a Craft 2018, which is what I'm finishing off here. And he's smoking the Dojo K9 from Protocol. I am kicking myself for missing out on those. I got to see if I can weasel some from somebody. Get some on the secondary market or something. And he says to just call him Brad Polish. Thank you, Brad Polish last name. Lou Liga wants to know if any of us have smoked the Unicorn. Not yet. I've as I mentioned before, I have one that was given to me by an anonymous benefactor who wishes to not be named. I'm waiting until it's nice out, and I need to wait for a cigar like that. I want to wait until the perfect day where I can really review it and make sure that my palate is on point. Because right now, this time of year, I'm just getting off of like the cold season where I have a cold constantly, and I'm just getting into allergy season, like in the last couple days.
That's rough,
so
man.
I need to make it through this hell that I'm in, so that I can get to a point where I can take notes on taste an entire cigar.
Yeah, those unicorns are something special. Anyway, Steve Saka did some events here in Portland, and we were hanging out with him, and he was just smoking cigars, and he just busted out a unicorn and smoked it like it was an everyday thing. It was really funny.
Well, and so the funniest thing to me, like I yelled at Steve Saka because we're sitting there in this lounge and he's smoking it, and this guy from across the room goes, "Steve, what are you smoking?" And he goes, "Oh, it's one of my Moisture de Sakas. It's the unicorn." And they're like, "Oh, I've never heard of that. What is it?" And he's like, "It's a broadleaf cigar, Nicaraguan filler. I just really like it. It's a perfecto." And I was like, "Steve, what the hell's wrong with you?" And I was like, he was trying to make the most expensive cigar he could possibly make. And then Steve finally went in and told the story. But Steve was just going to tell him that it's a cigar. But that's just kind of how Steve is. Like, Steve loves telling stories, but he does it kind of humbly. He's not telling stories to tell you about all the cool stuff he's ever done. He's telling you stuff because it's funny.
He's a lot of fun to hang out with.
I really like that guy.
He's very laid back.
And then another thing from Brad Polish last name, he says the canine reminds him of the Todos Los Dias a little bit. That's interesting. I'm looking forward to trying those. I really want to try that because I
just missed out on those.
Me too. And I'm a huge fan of Juan and Bill, and every cigar they've ever made, pretty much. They've made a lot of really good cigars. And they haven't been around very long, and they've only made a couple of cigars, but everything they've made has been fantastic. All right, well, that's March Madness. I don't want to wax on too long about March Madness. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on March Madness before we kind of move on?
I'd say the only closing thought is that it is supposed to be fun. On the internet, sometimes people tend to get a little bit worked up out of things, but
yeah, don't take it too seriously.
It's just fun.
It's just for fun. We just do it so that we can, it generates a lot of discussion, which is fun. Like, people are posting about it and people are liking it and trying to get their friends to vote, which is fun. And then, it's fun for the man. It's good marketing for pretty much anyone involved, but especially the guy who wins. Because then we ended up talking about their cigars a little more than we usually do.
It's fun to track
nice to open the discussion.
Mm-hmm. And there's always, I always discover a cigar that I hadn't tried yet.
Every time.
Process. And I'm like, I should go try that smoke. And it's good.
And as Steve Saka said, Steve Saka was, again, very, I feel like humble is the right word. He talks about being in, like, we were talking about when he was here, it was the Elite Eight. And so we were talking about how he had 5 of 8, which is crazy. And he was just like, well, any of the top 16, like, that's a shopping list of cigars that you need to go buy. And he's 100% right. All of those cigars are worth smoking. Some of them you'll like, some of them you won't, but that's how cigars are. And Bob Langmaid is thinking so I'm actually pulling out my next cigar, which, I mean, this is just coincidental, but it's a Protocol.
Ooh.
The old Protocol
nice.
Blue. And I noticed they have some new shiny bands that fit a little better with the newer stuff. But he's thinking the Themis Lancero will be released soon. I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
The Themis was one of my favorite Connecticut cigars of the year, which I had a lot of favorite Connecticut cigars this year. And the Themis was one of the better ones, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a big Connecticut boom. Very cool.
The Themis and the Fratello. Really good Connecticut's.
Those two are kind of my top Connecticut's of the year. And interestingly, so the really interesting thing between those two cigars is that they're different enough where I could smoke them back to back in either order. But both of them work as a first thing in the morning cigar or as like an afternoon cigar, because both of them have a little bit more body than a typical Connecticut. All right, what else do you guys want to talk about before we get into our AVO winners?
I don't have much more else on March Madness. It'll be interesting.
It doesn't have to be March Madness.
I'm really curious to see what happens with the half wheel consensus next year, because with kind of the FDA stuff, it's like the number of new cigars is going to become less and less and less. So,
yeah, as I've talked about a little bit, I think we are going to change our format a little bit, because previously our format was it has to have been released in that calendar year. I'm thinking of either just opening it up to everything, which the problem with that is I don't know. We're not quite like Cigar Aficionado, where, they review 40 cigars a month and they review stuff, just whatever's on the shelf.
yeah.
We don't have that kind of bandwidth for reviews, but I think we might open it up a little bit, maybe 2 years or 3 years of releases, so that people who didn't come out with a cigar this year are still eligible, because the number of cigars that come out in a calendar year are going to be going down every year until something changes with the FDA. Lou Liga says a lot of new cigars are coming at the IPCPR. Absolutely there. But the number is going down. It was noticeable last year that there were less new releases than there were in previous years. And then I think this year it's probably going to go down a little more. But it may kind of stay the same, because people are still, people still have cigars that are that were phantom released, shadow released, whatever you want to call it. But people still have a lot of stuff in the hopper.
Yeah, doesn't I think Matt Booth is releasing The Farce, right?
Yeah.
It's coming out. I think there was a soft release in Phoenix.
Yeah, there was a soft release, and it was available at a couple of places. I know Small Batch had them. A couple other places had like just a few packs of them. It was a pretty small release. The other thing that I like about a 2-year window is there was a lot of stuff that came out this year that we didn't get to review. We had it, or we got it, or sometimes we got it a little bit later than other people. But we can only review so many cigars, and I feel like it's kind of unfair that if we didn't review your cigar in 2017, you're ineligible for 2018, because even though it was out, we didn't review it, and now you're never going to be in any of our top 25 lists. That seems crazy to me. So I think 2 years at the minimum is what we're going to change it to, because that seems a little more fair to me.
Yeah, it gives you a bigger window to try the cigars and give reviews out.
Yeah.
If I could just review cigars all week long, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great if you just didn't have to work or take care of your kids or pay the bills or anything?
Just drink some beers and have a bunch of cigars, a little bit of whiskey on the side.
Brad Polish last name, says he smoked The Farce. What did you think of it? I'm curious about it. I really liked both the I'm blanking on the name, the Hit and Run, and I really liked the tea as well.
The tea, yeah.
I think both of those were really good. And yeah, Coop says he does the same thing with the 2-year window. It wasn't done for less releases. It was done to give cigars that came out late in the year a fair chance, which is 100%. I mean, a lot of cigars come out in November and December, and if we don't review it before the end of December, there's no way it's making it on our list. So this way, it opens it up to be on the list the following year. I'm trying to think of something that was like that this year. There was something that didn't make it onto our list that I smoked fairly recently. I don't know what it was.
I have to give a quick shout out to Coop. I finally worked my way through his baseball season preview show, and I'm a very casual baseball fan, and I now feel like I know more about baseball than most people I know.
I didn't watch that only because nothing personal, Coop. You know that I love you, and you know that I love your show, and I just don't care about baseball. Like baseball, I can sit down and watch a baseball game, but the theory of baseball thing is just mind-numbing to me. I don't know why. I've tried to care about sports, and I just can't do it. I don't know.
And I've always been from the Pacific Northwest, and it's like we have the Seattle Mariners, which have never been a great baseball team. It's just like, all right.
Yeah, they're the only team around. I mean, I grew up with baseball. I grew up in Virginia and Connecticut. So the portion of my life where I lived in Virginia, we would go to Baltimore Orioles games all the time. The portion where we went to, or where we lived in Connecticut, we would go to Yankees games all the time.
Yeah, I mean, in New York, New Jersey, everybody's into baseball, and I'm the only guy that I know that doesn't know anything. I know a little bit about the game. I don't follow it, and every time somebody talks about it in the office, I always kind of have to shy away and hide in the corner and really try to not make eye contact. It's one of those.
That's how it is for me. It's not that I don't enjoy watching it, because like if I go to a baseball game or if it's on TV, I can 100% enjoy it. The thing that like doesn't click in my brain is like, this is my team and it's the only team I care about.
Yeah,
that's the thing that just doesn't. I don't understand.
And football, the same for me as well.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about all of the sports.
Any ball sports.
Any ball sports, yeah.
You got hockey.
See, hockey's another game that I really like watching, but I don't care about which team wins. Whoever has the cooler jersey is who I'm rooting for that day.
Hey, how about that crashed ice? The Red Bull crashed ice?
What?
That's you've never heard about that?
No.
It's wild. It's guys on skates going down like a course with jumps and turns, and they have to race each other.
Oh, really?
That sounds intense.
It's crazy. You gotta look it up.
That.
It's pretty cool.
I watched the Red Bull Rampage, which is the crazy like downhill mountain bike stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just terrifying stuff.
Red Bull does a lot of those crazy sports.
Yeah, the air races. It's
oh yeah.
Yeah, of course, the air races. I forgot about those.
It's fun to watch though.
Dangerous stuff.
All right, let me pull up the winners for our Avo contest. So I randomly picked the winners already from everybody who entered. Thank you, everybody, for entering. If you didn't enter, what were you doing? We posted it, and we talked about it on the show. So I'm going to email these people. So if it's not like if you're not listening or if you're listening to the podcast the week after or something, you're not going to miss out. So I'm going to email all of these people and make sure that if something doesn't work out, then I'll disqualify them and draw another person. So if you didn't win and you're watching live, you still have a chance. But the winners are Miguel Rocha. He won a box of cigars, a box of the Avo 30th Anniversary Improvisation, which is a fantastic cigar with a beautiful box. That box is incredible. Like it's one of the highest quality boxes I've ever seen. And Donald Santos also won one of those. And then the Ritmo bag that I have, the getaway bag kind of thing, Aaron Pierce won that one. And then the grand prize, which I'm so jealous of, the record player, is going to Michael Wright.
Awesome.
So congratulations to those guys.
Yeah, those coming up on the summertime, those Avo 30ths are going to be amazing.
Yeah, because that is a big cigar. I think it's 7.5 by 48 or so, and it takes about. I've smoked two of them now. I smoked one on the show and one sometime after the show, and that's like a good 2.5 hour cigar.
Yeah. Take him slow.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think. So we can brainstorm here on the show, or we can talk about it later. But I posted in the show notes that I need to figure out a name for this kind of episode where we're just hanging out. I like I chose the term news of the week just because I couldn't think of anything else. But it's less about news and more about just hanging out and smoking cigars. No suggestions? Come on.
Maybe. I was just trying to think. I like that show on HBO, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He does some pretty funny stuff there. So it could be like Last Week Tonight in Cigars or Cigars This Week.
This Week in Cigars.
This Week in Cigars.
I kind of like that. Let me put that in my notes here, because I do kind of like that. And so for anybody who's listened a couple times before, CigarChat Roundtable. That is a good name.
Bob, that's cool. A good one.
I like that.
Thank you, Bob.
I think that's going to stick. Thank you.
I was going to say Stogie time with Cigar Federation, but I think Bob's hit it.
I think he hit the nail on the head, and I don't think we need any other suggestions. So anybody who's watched the show frequently enough knows I'm a big fan of MMA. I watch a lot of UFC. That's the only sport that I get behind. And a lot of the reason for that is because it's a singular sport. It's not a team sport. And it's just awesome. But today has been an insane day for the UFC. This morning, Conor McGregor went on a bizarre, out of rampage. And I've been keeping up on it all day because I just want to know what's going to happen with this.
It's all that cocaine, man. I don't know what's going on with that dude. Must be.
That's what everybody says.
He's got a bad dealer in New York, maybe.
There are people who watched the videos because so actually before I start talking about that, I'll explain for anybody who's not up on what's going on. So there was a press conference this morning. It was the weigh-in for UFC 223, which is this weekend. A couple of very big fights there. Rose Namajunas versus Johanna Jędrzejczyk 2. Khabib Nurmagomedov is fighting. I don't remember who he's fighting. Not Tony Ferguson, but he's fighting somebody. Michael Chiesa is fighting. But there are a lot of big fights, and apparently some drama has been happening this week between Khabib. I'll just say Khabib because I'm not trying to say his name again.
Yeah, it's tough.
Between Khabib and Artem Lobov, he's one of the guys that trains with Conor McGregor, and he has for a very long time. I guess there was some sort of altercation. They're both from the Eastern Bloc originally. There was some sort of altercation where they cornered him and were yelling at Artem or something like that. And then at the weigh-in today, Conor McGregor and the reports all say about 30 people came rushing in and were attacking people. They were throwing trash cans at people, and Conor McGregor actually, there's video evidence of him hurling a
through the window,
a refrigerator dolly, kind of
I just saw that he picks up. It looks like one of those big metal guardrails that they use to kind of maintain it. It's he just picks up the thing and throws it.
Yeah, over his head too, just wild, it was nothing.
But
those things are pretty heavy.
Yeah.
He threw this dolly through the window of the bus that had some of the fighters on it, and injured people. And there are conflicting reports on whether a warrant is out for his arrest or not. It's craziness. Wow. And I was just actually reading. So Ray Borg was scheduled to fight this week, and apparently he went into the hospital just a little while ago, within the last half an hour. He went into the hospital because they think he's got shards of glass in his eye because of that shattered window in the bus.
Wow.
It's insane. I don't understand why Conor McGregor would do this kind of thing. He has so many millions of dollars that he never has to fight again. And this could put all of that at risk. He could be sued for, potentially millions of dollars. And not only by the UFC, but by the people he's injured now, or traumatized for some of them. And then he might be deported. He's not a U.S. citizen. He's just he's living here for work for the UFC, obviously.
Yeah.
This is a big deal.
Well,
and it's great.
Let's step back for a second and really consider this as possibly being a heel storyline and some promotion. Possibly, I don't know. I wonder because it's
people going to the hospital.
Conflicting stories. I don't know.
People going to a hospital is a little too far.
WWE kind of a vibe,
right?
To it,
it really does.
Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H in the parking garage, kind of a thing.
Man.
So Tyler Olson says, from what he heard, Dana White was stripping McGregor of his title and then giving it to the winner of the upcoming fight between. Not Tony Ferguson. I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is. Max Holloway. Max Holloway and Khabib Nurmagomedov. The winner is going to get the title, which Conor got back in November of 2016. So, I mean, he's basically been vacant for like a year and a half. And, I mean, you have to assume that he's been offered fights multiple times to defend, and he's never defended that title in the last couple of years. I don't see why he would be that angry about it. He can't expect to just, like, keep the title forever, right?
How does that work? Do you have to stay active to keep the title, or I'm not sure.
As far as I know, there's no hard and fast rule about it. But
I know in boxing, once you sort of officially stop fighting, then they kind of like put the title up for grabs for the new people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they do this. They've done the same thing with a couple of weight classes in the UFC before, where somebody either retires as a champion, which has only happened like once or twice, or where somebody gets injured and can't come back for an extended period of time, or something like this, where somebody moves out of their weight class and they end up just never coming back. And it's called vacating the title. And then sometimes they'll have an interim champion. There's 3 different states. It's vacant, which means nobody's the champion. Current, which means until today at least, Conor McGregor was the current champion. And then there's interim. So what happens with interim? So I think, let me see. I think Max Holloway was already Max Holloway's in a different weight class, right? I'm getting all confused now that I'm talking about it. But so, for example, if somebody is injured or like this, they're kind of on a layoff where they're not fighting for a while for whatever reason, moving to other weight classes. If they still plan on coming back, they'll remain the champion, but they'll crown an interim champion. And then basically when they come back, the interim champion is who they have to fight. But either way, I can't see Conor being this upset to risk his career over them stripping him of his title when he hasn't even attempted to defend it in the last year and a half. It's crazy.
Yeah, doesn't make sense. And I know the UFC is big on it's there's a lot of personalities in it, but they try to keep it a serious sport and kind of rein people in the best that they can. So to do something like that, to just jeopardize your entire future in a sport, seems crazy.
Yeah. And this seems like the kind of thing where this could be the end of his career.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. It's insane.
I wish I knew more about MMA. I actually don't follow it too much, but I just want The Undertaker to come back. Like, that's my thing. And
yeah,
he might.
WWE guy.
He might come back. I don't know. Cena wants to fight him, so if you're into wrestling, that might happen. But that's all I know.
I know we've got somebody watching, Lou Liga. He's big into wrestling. I know that. All right. What else do we have to talk about? Or is that it? There's got to be something we got to talk about.
Some general good news in cigar legislation is it appears like New York State did away with the crazy tobacco tax.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That was like, I don't know who finally convinced them, but that just seemed outrageous what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, the tax proposal that they had was crazy. And I'm just noticing that our screens are messed up here. I don't know what changed.
Yeah, with taxes and stuff, I think it's interesting because I studied a little bit of economics in college and whatnot, and it's like there's a point of taxation to where the government is making money, and then when it gets too high, they lose money because they essentially drive people to other markets to get those things. Yeah. And it's one thing if your primary goal is to just stop people from doing something, then there's not a lot of logic you can put into that. But if you are trying to actually earn some revenue off of taxes, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, there's too much money to be made in New York off of cigars and tobacco in general for them to make a move like that. And I'm really happy that they decided not to go through with that.
Yeah, that's what you would think. All right, I got our video fixed here. I don't know what happened. Our video screens were just moved down, and there was a big gray bar at the top of each of them. But we're all good now.
I'm trying to think of what else is going on in the cigar world.
There hasn't been like a ton of news. I mean, there's people are kind of starting to announce stuff for IPCPR.
Yeah.
Tatuaje has the 15th anniversary releases coming out. There's like a Nestor Miranda 75th anniversary.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to both of those.
Ramon Iones, right? They moved over to AJ for manufacturing and distribution.
Yeah, so that was the Ramon Iones, what was it? So the Foundry Ramon Iones came out a couple years ago. And I think there was a stealth release of the AJ version, because I think I remember seeing them, or at least hearing about them, but I'm not positive. Brad with the Polish last name wants to know what I thought of the Craft 2018. I think at this point it's a little too early to tell. So this is the second one that I've smoked, but they just came in this week. So, I always give a cigar the benefit of a doubt, and I try not to read into it too much if it's only been in my humidor for like a week or two. But so far, I really like it. So the way that I would describe it is it reminds me of a Neanderthal. Specifically, the blend reminds me of the HOXD, which is the Petite Corona size. But then with the Pennsylvania Broadleaf, it's way more intense and spicy. So the regular Neanderthal with the San Andreas, it's not really that spicy. It's got kind of a it reminds me of like a pastry sweetness and then some spice. And this has more of like a dark molasses sweetness and a lot more spice. And then it's got like some definite grassy notes. I was talking right before the show. Actually, it might have been at the beginning of the show. I don't remember. About how the Candela wrapper really adds some of that like grassy, almost hoppy kind of flavor, a little bitterness. I really like it so far.
I kind of like that Candela has taken a very different role nowadays versus, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, when it was strictly a wrapper and everybody thought that cigar looks gross and it's going to taste gross. And now they're using it more as an accent to fuller-bodied cigars, which I think it's much better at doing.
Yeah, it's working very well.
I mean, historically, the best Candelas have been the ones that are really strong for a Candela, where you're not tasting much of that Candela. It's really more of an accent note. And I think that I like that trend. I hope we see more of that, and I hope there's not too much drama about people calling each other out for stealing their idea.
Yeah, it was interesting. Some like the early Candelas were it's like they took a Connecticut blend and threw a Candela on it. And it
exactly.
Was like smoking a wad of hay.
Yeah, it was just grassy and bitter, and it has like this weird chlorophyll sourness sometimes.
But you throw in some like spicy Habano or some broadleaf or something, and it really changes the character.
Yeah, because I think it covers up a lot of the faults of the Candela, but Candela is still Candela is a lot stronger than Connecticut, which is I think why it's been kind of a failure for the most part when it's the sole wrapper on a cigar. There's definitely a couple standouts there, but for the most part it doesn't tend to work well. And I think that's partly because it's overpowering, but when you overpower it with a stronger wrapper, I like the character it brings. I think it turns out well.
In other random cigar stuff, I finally smoked a Roma Craft Neanderthal genetic deformity.
Oh yeah,
and
nice.
That was interesting. Like I didn't expect it to be that much different, but I completely was able to pick out the differences. So
yeah, that's
a cool smoking experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's so different from the regular Neanderthal. And actually, last week I smoked my last SGP and my last genetic deformity kind of back to back. Like I smoked the first 2/3 of the SGP, and then I lit the GD at the same time, and it was really interesting because they are so different. Like you can taste you can really taste that the fillers are the same. They've got the same amount of body and the same amount of strength, but then the flavors on top are so different. Like with the Neanderthal, you have that like sort of delicate sweetness that's really characteristic of it, which I didn't realize was coming from the wrapper. I always thought that Mexican wrappers were typically a little less sweet and a little more spice and earth. And the spice and earth are definitely there, but it's got a like really pronounced sweetness that almost dials back the spice a little bit because it's not as spicy as most San Andreas wrap cigars. But then when you put on the Aquitaine and Cro-Magnon, the Habano and the broadleaf wrappers, you end up with like this immense sweetness and this immense spice that is completely different. And I think it's just a really interesting kind of experiment to do when you can taste the exact same fillers and binder with a completely different wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced that Neanderthal is actually bulletproof because I had one. I was on a boat in upstate New York in the rain fishing, smoking it, and it was just soaked. And it smoked great. It tasted great. It just held up to the rain. It was insane. I've never seen that happen with a cigar.
I mean, it's got a lot of oily tobacco in it.
Yeah.
It's got Pennsylvania broadleaf filler, and it's got that Mexican San Andreas wrapper. And maybe it was just wicking away all the moisture because it's so oily.
It must have been.
It was like Teflon tobacco. Dennis, that I feel like that could be an interesting segment. What have you smoked this week that surprised you?
Well, actually, unfortunately, I haven't really smoked that much this week because I've been getting this horrible vertigo. Since the weekend. So I've been sort of trying not to push the edge too much. And you know me, I love really spicy, really strong, absolutely full body cigars. Probably my favorite for this week so far is Nakatamale. It's just killer.
I love that cigar.
I'm loving it. And the spice I thought initially was going to be very overwhelming. And now that I'm kind of, getting there toward the end, it's leveled out really nicely. Very well balanced. Smoke's great.
So I don't know if you remember the story, but for anybody who's listening who doesn't know the story of that cigar, so the Muestra de Saca is basically a series of challenges that Steve set up for himself, specific to blending of cigars. So the first one was the Exclusivo. He wanted to make an all Nicaraguan cigar that doesn't really taste like a Nicaraguan cigar. That's more mild. It has more of that like sweeter, less intense characteristics than you usually get from Nicaraguan tobacco. Because obviously Nicaraguan tobacco is usually spicy, strong. And so that was the Exclusivo. The Nakatamale is where he wanted to take all tobaccos of the same vintage from the same farm. And I'm not positive whether he's using separate seeds or whether they're all the same seed. I think they're all the same seed, but I could be wrong on that. But they were all harvested the same year, and they're basically just different primings of the same tobaccos. And it's really incredible to me that he could make a cigar that complex with all tobacco from the same farm, because typically you're pulling from different farms, if not different countries or different parts of the world. And of course, different vintages, because typically, like a broadleaf grown in Nicaragua, a Habano grown in Nicaragua is going to ferment for a lot less time than like a broadleaf grown in Connecticut. And I'm excited to see what else he has up his sleeve for those.
I found that cigar is one of those like sneaky ones, is that it doesn't seem that strong, but then by the time you get to the end of it, you start to feel it.
Oh yeah, I've definitely noticed.
I smoked a Tatuaje Michael again this week.
Oh, nice.
And that's good. I the full-size monsters, I always think it's interesting because they come out around Halloween, of course, and then universally I found that if you check in on that 6 months later, it's always better. I don't know what it is,
every
but
time.
Yeah, same for me.
I completely agree. Nothing against Pete, but I do think they ship those a little fresh. It seems like they're always rushing to get them out on time, to me. And I think they always smoke better a little bit down the road.
yeah, like I thought that the depth of flavor on that thing just like tripled.
Wow.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Dude, I actually noticed that with so I picked up a couple of hides when they first came out, a couple of boxes, and I let them sit. And you know, I enjoyed it, not as much as I do now. I enjoyed it when it first came out, obviously, and I let it sit for a while, and now it's just killer for me. I think it's really great to let it sit, smoke it now, then smoke it, 6 months later, see how it's developed. And like you said, it really does change for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And a very good thing that's kind of been the trend since the Jason came out. Before the Jason came out, if you missed out on a monster release, it was the end. You were never going to see him again, unless it was on the secondary market for double or triple what you could have paid for it at retail. And I've noticed that they sit around a little more. I'm not sure how much the production's gone up, but it seems like less people are clamoring for them, which I think it seems like a bad thing, but I think it's actually a good thing. Because that way you can, once it gets to that 6-month point, you can see how you feel about it. Like for me, the Jason was the one where I bought one and I didn't love it. I thought it was good, but I didn't love it. And then about a year later, it was after the next one had already come out. I got one in a bomb or something, and I smoked it, and it blew my mind. So I bought 2 boxes because I could still find 2 boxes for MSRP.
Yeah.
And it seems like you've got more time than you used to have. They used to sell out immediately, and now you get a little bit more time. They still sell out by the time the next one comes out usually.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really impressed with the skinny monsters too. I really like those a lot.
Yeah. I think they suffer from the same thing as the full size, where they're way better 6 months, a year down the road.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference, to me at least. All right, any other closing comments before we finish up here, guys?
I don't think so.
I think we covered pretty much everything, yeah?
Yeah. If you're watching and you've got a comment or a question or anything, you've still got time before we close out. I'm really enjoying this protocol. It's been a few months since I smoked a Blue Label protocol. I mean, this cigar is one of those cigars that has so much flavor and it really sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
Because there are four different Ligeros in this, which is a lot.
It's wild.
Like, that's enough where it's surprising that it burns well. And it doesn't burn perfectly, but I mean, it's got 4 Ligero leaves. What do you expect, man?
Those protocols age really well too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they really do. And I don't even know when this one is from because it's got the old label. I think they just switched the labels pretty recently because I haven't seen them around anywhere. But man, I love this cigar. What about what you guys are smoking?
Well, I was gonna say. Oh no, go for it, Jason.
This El Huehuense Maduro, the Wise Man Maduro, is just, it's awesome. This Corona Gorda size in this thing, like I could smoke one of these every day for the rest of my life.
That's a killer cigar.
Really good, and I'm pairing it with this Left Hand Nitro Stout.
Oh yeah,
really good pairing too. I didn't realize this thing was 10%.
Oops.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. I was going to ask the question that is key. What are you guys drinking?
So what do you have, Tripp? So I'm drinking Ecliptic Phaser IPA, hazy IPA. So this is local, semi-regular production, seasonal. It's interesting because, so the first time I saw it at the store, I was like, oh, that's got a nice looking label and it says hazy on it. And I flipped it over and went, oh, this was canned yesterday. So I bought it.
You have to.
Yeah, exactly. When it's that fresh, you got to buy it. And I got home and drank one, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I actually texted Dennis, now that I think about it. I texted Dennis a picture of it and was like, dude, this is amazing. Because
that's right. Yeah,
it's a regular hazy IPA, but it kind of tastes like a milkshake that's a mix of a West Coast and East Coast style, where it's got that like East Coast fruity sweetness, but then it's got like that West Coast resiny bitterness. And I think it does a really good job of kind of melding those two styles. And then I went the next day and they were completely sold out. And then I went to the store down the street and they were completely sold out.
Of course.
And then about a month ago, I was at a store and, it was right before we did the wine pairing show. And I was at the store looking at wine, trying to figure out what to buy. And the lady who runs the wine department and the beer department came over and said, "Are you finding everything you need?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm great." And she looked in my cart and she was like, "Oh, I see you got the good stuff," because I had a bunch of hazies and a bunch of triple IPAs in there, which had just come out. And she said, "Have you had Phaser?" And I was like, "Oh, I love it, but I can't find it anywhere." She's like, "I think we have 1 6-pack in the back." She leaves and comes back. She's like, "We don't have 1 6-pack. It's gone. I saw it there yesterday and it's not there anymore. So somebody else must have bought it." But she said they actually had a canning issue where their production was cut into like a quarter of what it was supposed to be. And so people were clamoring for it all over town. And they had like pallets of it this time. So I think it's doing good again. And I love this beer. You can see it's like, I've got a little bit left here.
Oh yeah.
It's an interesting color because it's kind of that like West Coast IPA light.
It's got that pineapple juice thing going on.
Yeah, like pineapple juice, but then it's also hazy, and it's delicious.
Ecliptic's a really cool brewery. I like the astronomy theme that they do with all their beers.
Yeah,
and
cool.
The guy that's the head brewer and founder of it, he hangs out there a lot. And if you get to talking to him and ask him a question about beer, like he will just go on and tell you way more than you ever thought you wanted to know.
I inhaled a little bit of smoke there. That was not great. Brad, Polish last name, wants to know if any of us have ever tried rolling our own cigars. He's been dabbling in it lately.
I'm terrible.
Yeah, me too. But I'll talk about that in a second. He's got another comment. He rolled one with a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, Pennsylvania broadleaf wrapper, which I'm guessing means binder. One of those must be binder, right? I don't know. 2 leaves of Esteli Lajero and 2 leaves of Pennsylvania Lajero in the filler.
Oh my God.
And he thought it was going to kill him. Yeah. That's going to need I'm terrible at rolling cigars. So last year, on Cigar Safari, I tried a couple times, like very casually, like we didn't sit down at rolling tables or anything, but I had Henry and Willie Herrera trying to teach me how to roll a cigar, and I couldn't like make one that would feel consistent. They were all like 68 ring gauge and like loosely packed where you couldn't really smoke it. It was kind of like sucking on a hose. Like you couldn't take a draw of it because it wouldn't build up enough pressure. And it was a disaster. And then last year when I was at Puro Sabor, I was at the J.C. Newman factory, and they had like one of the activities that you do during the tour is roll your own cigars. And I had we had professional rollers, people who actually do it, as their job, overseeing us, and this guy had to fix every single one. I only rolled 5, but it took me about 45 minutes, and he had to fix every single one. But my consolation of that is he said that I could be a roller. I could get a job as a roller in a factory because I was good enough at putting the wrapper on. Bunching, I'm terrible at. The wrapper, I'm okay at.
Bunching is hard. It's really tough.
It's like you have to have 3 hands to do it because you have to get all the leaves placed correctly and then hold them just right so you can get the next couple leaves in there. And then you have to turn them and get it just right down on the bunch so it doesn't just fall apart, or on the binder, so it doesn't fall apart as you're trying to roll it. And
it's an art form.
I just can't do it. But back to Brad's cigar. Dude, that sounds like a killer cigar. So Esteli Ligero and Pennsylvania Ligero are both extremely thick, heavy wrappers that are obviously very strong. Everybody knows that. But the thing you don't necessarily know is they're really thick and heavy, and they hold a lot of moisture. So part of the reason that they're that strong initially is because they've got so much moisture content that you end up getting a lot of steam in the smoke. And that's when you get like that harshness on the back of your throat.
Yeah.
And that you always get from wet tobacco. I think if you give those like 6 months or a year in a humidor, they'll be better and they'll be smokable, but it's still going to be pretty damn strong. And he says he aged it for 3 months and it would barely burn. I mean, I don't know if it's ever going to burn well.
Yeah. That's a firecracker.
It's like a challenge cigar.
Mm-hmm. The challenge is to see who can keep it lit the longest. All right. Any other closing comments before we finish up the show? Before we wrap it up?
No. Thank you to all for listening. These shows are always fun.
Yeah, I like them because it's just hanging out. It's not, there's not necessarily a purpose to it. It's just we're just hanging out with the listeners, talking and smoking cigars and drinking a little bit of whatever.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. Right. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on next time we have one of these. We do have a couple guests booked that I want to talk about. I think I mentioned it yesterday, but next week I'm going to be on assignment on Wednesday, so we won't have a new episode of Sharing Our Pairings, but we will have a new episode of Cigar Chat. Or I'm sorry, we are working on a special guest host for Sharing Our Pairings, but either way, I will not be there. I will be there for Cigar Chat next week, where we are going to have Enrique Sanchez from 1502 Cigars. And I love his cigars. They are fantastic. I can't wait to talk to him. I love that dude. And then the following week, we're going to have somebody who's never been on the show, and I've only smoked one of their cigars, and that was within the last couple days, is Al McAuliffe. I've heard wonderful things about their cigars. They've got a lot of blends, and they've got like really classic packaging, and their booth at IPCPR was really fancy. But unfortunately, we didn't get to talk to him this past year. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Al as well. That'll be the following week. And then the week after that, we've got a very special episode of Sharing Our Pairings with our good friend Barry Stein. We're going to be smoking the Atabey Lancero, which I am so excited about.
I'm pumped for that.
I cannot wait to smoke that one. Yeah, I think we're going to have to go highfalutin for our pairings on that one.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if Barry will, but, yeah, I mean, Barry likes to drink a little more. So, I can't fault him for not going highfalutin if he's not going to remember it the next day.
That's like a bust out your high-end Japanese whiskey and just enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. And we may have a special guest co-host as well, so we may have 4 people on that one, which would be pretty awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. I love hanging out with Barry. It's going to be a long show, and if it's anything like our previous episodes with Barry, we'll be on Skype well into the night after the show ends, just hanging out. Because that's what always happens with him. He's just so fun to hang out with. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening. And, of course, thank you to all of our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners. We appreciate you guys out there doing things we are not built to do and protecting our freedoms. And everybody have a great and safe weekend, and we'll see you next week.